Very proud to be continuing the journey with this video sponsor, Squarespace. They just re-signed for the 7th year running, making them our longest running and most supportive partner. They help me do what I do, just like their website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more. You've never played a game quite like Cairn. Sure, you can point to Bennett Foddy's QWOP since the control scheme has the same limb-by-limb granularity with all the accompanying jankiness, but QWOP was kind of a bit of silly fun in an era where Flash games still existed. Great era, by the way. I wish we could go back. You could point to Bennett Foddy's other game, Getting Over It, but that was really an exercise in masochism, daring audiences to see how much punishment they could endure before finally snapping.
I'm done! Oh god! No, my god!
You could point to Bennett Foddy's other game, Baby Steps, but that's ultimately centered on the fact that it's very funny to watch a grown man in a onesie soil himself as he falls down repeatedly. The closest analogy to Cairn that I can think of is actually Death Stranding 1. In that game, you don't control each of Sam Porter Bridges' limbs, but the control scheme is centered on balancing Sam's body, and it's about getting from point A to point B over hostile terrain, and you can choose your route, and you need to manage resources like stamina, health, and your equipment. Like Cairn, Death Stranding is also about isolation, though the message about isolation couldn't be more different. Sam's quest is about building connections, while Ava's is about severing them. Point we'll come back to later. Point is, there's nothing quite like Cairn. Its gameplay loop, its control scheme, its approach to storytelling, exploration, and secrets, it's all unique, making Cairn feel like a subtle breakthrough. Subtle in the sense that it hasn't exploded onto the scene with the sorts of player counts or discourse that garner much attention, but breakthrough in the sense that we've never seen anything quite like this before, and you just know that all the best game designers in the world are playing this thing, and that every one of them is taking at least something away from this experience. You can't play Cairn and think, oh, that was nice, what's next? Instead, it's the sort of experience that stays with you, forcing you to rethink games that came before it and imagine the ones that will come after it. There's something deeply organic about Cairn, and very few video games possess this quality. The overwhelming majority of video games exist squarely within the construct of the term video game. Like, your average video game cannot be called a simulation because A, it's not realistic enough, and B, it's surrounded by gamified elements like loot rarities and point scoring systems and respawning enemies, etc. Even games that don't tick these checkboxes, say Microsoft Flight Simulator, could still never be described as organic because there's nothing organic about the cockpit of a Boeing 747. And while Cairn has its own video game bullshit in the mix, stuff like save points and survival elements, it still feels like the game makers essentially just put a big rock in front of you and said, climb it as a regular human would. And then they gave you a control scheme and a physics model that largely mirrors what climbing is actually like, and that was it. I haven't tested this, but I'm pretty sure you could hand the Cairn controller to someone who has never played a video game in their life, and they're going to be able to connect with it because there's something instinctive about seeing a thing and wanting to climb it, and because the control scheme is a simple simulation of the way the human body moves, there's very little that the player needs to be taught as they begin their ascent. As a human being with arms and legs of their own, and with experience climbing trees or jungle gyms or whatever else, they already know how to play before they've even picked up the controller. But knowing how to play is not the same as being good at it, and Cairn certainly has a steep learning curve, no pun intended. Most of it isn't tutorialized, which adds to the organic feeling of Cairn. It feels far less a video game when you have to figure out for yourself which specific positions or movements will be most effective when climbing, rather than having advanced techniques appear in pop-up boxes or worse, unlocked through a skill tree. A lot of the learning comes from observation and visualization. A camera setting allows you to pull back and take in large sections of the mountain around you, and you cannot zoom in to see areas that you're far away from. Similarly, the camera when you're controlling Ava is extremely limited, giving you a fairly narrow field of view. All this becomes important when you start to notice that many of the most vital, game-changing hand and footholds are essentially invisible until you get close to them. It's only when you've actually committed to a direction that you're able to see that what looked from afar to be a sheer rock face actually has the tiniest, almost imperceptible angle jutting out, which is just enough for you to use. Similarly, this can also be the moment when you realize that the sheer rock face you viewed from afar is just that, totally sheer, forcing you to retreat backwards, which is generally harder than climbing upwards and usually results in you falling. The search for these ideal routes is challenging enough since it requires a huge amount of patience and discipline, but the game makers make things even more challenging by limiting Ava's resources: food, water, warmth, and stamina. On the standard difficulty, these resources are oppressive to the point where even modest climbs can see you arriving at a new plateau completely resource-starved. It's in this pacing that Cairn starts to feel a little less organic. Its compressed timeline is meant to reflect a full in-game day in around 30 minutes of playtime, and in that 30 minutes, Ava will need to drink upwards of 6 bottles of water and eat a decent amount of food to remain sustained. That stuff goes really fast, and it creates a layer of time pressure that synergizes with climb difficulty, since the most difficult sections are typically near to a checkpoint ledge, and your resources are running out at almost the exact moment that you begin attempting these difficult sections. This brings me to one of the most interesting things about Cairn, its approach to difficulty. Cairn is not a difficult game in the sense that it's really just about putting your hands and feet anywhere where you can see a potential hand or foothold. What makes it challenging and memorable is how long Cairn asks you to climb without providing a checkpoint. I remember a game called Ashen from 2018, and believe it or not, this was actually one of the early Souls-likes. Pretty easy game for the most part, except for this one area called the Seat of the Matriarch, and it was this massive, abyss-like dungeon that was essentially pitch black and crawling with enemies, and it just made you go deeper and deeper, and there was no checkpoint. We're talking like 30 minutes of fumbling around in the dark with narrow walkways and enemies that constantly jump you from out of nowhere. No checkpoint. And as I was doing it and wiping over and over again, it was never really about the inherent difficulty of the dungeon. It was more about the feeling of being in this heightened state for so long that activated a different part of my brain. This dungeon from an otherwise pretty forgettable game has seared itself into my memory, and I will never forget it as long as I live, just like I'll never forget some of my most clutch runs in Pacific Drive where my car was absolutely totaled and I was completely out of supplies, but I had to keep going, and just like I'll never forget my first descent into the depths of Subnautica. The list goes on. There's something that happens when a game asks us to do something hard over a long span of time, and Cairn is doing that to you over and over again for however long it takes to clear this game. Most games have this explosive tension and release of difficulty where challenge windows are fairly narrow. In Cairn, nothing moves quickly. The slow limb-by-limb progression of Ava can feel glacial, and at every moment you have time to think about how hard this is, about how far you've come, how frustrating it would be to fall, how much further you have to go when this leg of the climb is done. In short, Cairn not only keeps you under strain for a considerable length of time, but it also gives your mind space enough to consider that strain, resulting in a unique emotional battering that few games are able to dish out. For me, it was this climb right here. I saw this climb coming as I crossed a rope bridge toward it, and I immediately felt a little sick knowing that this game was going to make me climb that. I could see that there were some windows beneath it, so I knew I could worm my way up through the internal structure a little bit, but I could also see that above that there was nothing but rock face, and it was a section that was like 8 times bigger than anything I had climbed to that point. I remember getting to the foot of that rock face and just closing the game because I was like, I'm not mentally ready to do this right now, and I didn't come back to it for a full 2 days because I knew that I needed a good long stretch of time where I'd be able to do this uninterrupted. Before I started the climb, I made sure I had a good meal in real life because I wanted to be 100% focused on getting this done. And honestly, the climb itself was so much worse than I could have anticipated. It took me 1.5 hours of uninterrupted climbing to scale this section, and there was no checkpoint during this section. If I fell to the bottom when I was just meters from the top, or if I died from exposure, which was the more likely outcome, I would have lost that entire 1.5 hours worth of effort and been right back to the start. My Ava blacked out like 3 times during this climb because I ran out of food and water. The sun had set and was beginning to rise again as I neared the top. The final sections were brutally difficult with some very hard to spot handholds and awkward push angles, and I remember thinking to myself over and over again, I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm not going to make it. And it created this dread within me where I just felt so overwhelmed and hopeless. And look, I've never climbed a mountain before, but I'm going to assume that in the same way that Cairn perfectly simulates the physical act of climbing with its limb-based movement model, it also simulates the emotional act of climbing, where the fortitude of your mind is just as important as the fortitude of your body. This is one of the things that makes Cairn feel so organic. Its difficulty is less a construct in the traditional video game sense, where we need to reach high scores or dodge the dragon's attacks. It's a more instinctive challenge and elicits a more primal reaction that results in different brain chemistry and even physical effects, because I swear to God, no other game I've ever played has had my palms as sweaty as this.
I wanted to say, be careful.
Rooting for you to become the first human to set foot on the summit of Kami.
Yeah, sure.
We're going to talk story spoilers now, because it's essentially impossible to talk about Cairn's story without spoiling it. If you don't want that spoiled, I've left a timestamp on the screen that you can jump to. I've also got chapters in the YouTube player. Feel free to jump ahead now if you want to, as the rest of the video will be spoiler free. Cairn is a story of Ava, full-time rock climber, part-time jerk. She signed a deal with a business manager that provides the funding for this climb, but she deliberately smashes the camera she's been given, which should have been used to take photos for the sponsors. Ava has a partner at home waiting for her who clearly loves her very much. They together have a cat who is a bit sickly at the moment. Her partner calls on occasion to update Ava on life on the ground, but Ava views these updates as annoyances. Ava encounters a young climber by the name of Marco during her ascent, who is young, inexperienced, and full of optimism. Ava generally doesn't like this guy, tells him to be quiet or go away on more than one occasion, and even when she's trying to be encouraging, she's kind of a dick about it.
I'm going to die here.
Marco, no one ever said it would be easy. So you're gonna get up, pick up your stuff, and we'll continue this climb together.
No. This mountain isn't going to kill me. You are.
Pretty soon after I started playing, I realized that Ava was climbing that mountain with no intent to come back down. The way she smashed her business manager's camera, the way she refused to respond to her partner, the way she snapped that antenna off the Climbbot so she wouldn't get any more messages, the way she disregarded every warning along the way. It was clear to me that Ava knew that either this mountain was going to kill her, or once she'd summited it, there'd be no way she could come back down to face the world that awaited her on the ground, especially knowing that there would be no other climb she could use as her next emergency exit from the real world. As I played through it, I viewed all of this through the lens of obsession and addiction. I wondered if Cairn were a comment on the nature of climbers who do this incredibly dangerous thing when they actually have many reasons that they shouldn't. Why does the daredevil dare when they've got a wife and cat waiting for them back home? I mean, they could die, and for what? To say they stood on top of a rock that's taller than some other rocks? And if the slightest thing goes wrong, that person back home is left to nurse their grief evermore, always thinking that it didn't have to be this way if that person just stayed on the ground. Those were interesting questions to consider as I climbed, but as I got further into the game, I found some of Ava's characterization to be quite uneven. She's a totally uncaring jerk in one minute, and in the next she's nice and compassionate. One minute she's basically daring Marco to kill himself, and in the next she's sheepish and apologetic. I'll admit that when I was playing through the game, I wasn't sure what the game bakers wanted me to think of Ava. Like, do they want me to think that this person is just really determined? Or do they want me to think that she's just an asshole? Is the kindness she shows to Marco an act? Or is it the real her shining through in these moments when she's less focused on her goal? Is Ava ignoring her business manager and her life partner because she's super focused and needs that mental clarity to survive? Or is it because she literally just doesn't care about those things at all, and every moment lived on the ground is a suffering that can only be escaped by way of the next climb? Obsession only went some distance in reconciling these tensions, and for me, the answer came later in discussing the game on the Friends Per Second podcast, where my friend Lucy James said that she interpreted Cairn as an allegory for depression. And yeah, honestly, that just makes way more sense.
I'm not like you, Marco. The mountain is in my gut, deep inside.
No. I think the mountain is all in your head, like a disease that's eating at you. You can heal if you want to.
This depression diagnosis explains all of the unevenness in Ava's characterization. Depression is rarely a singular mood state, it's a shifting tapestry of different moods that flash and flare, but always resting back on an inability to find joy in things. It's why Ava refuses to communicate with those who care about her. It's why she derives no pleasure from hearing from her partner. It's why she's typically curt and irritable with Marco no matter how chipper he might be. It's why she prefers to be alone, and it's probably why she's climbing that mountain in the first place, knowing full well that the process of summiting piloting it will likely claim her life. In the context of obsession, Ava's climb is reckless, dangerous, and selfish. In the context of depression, Ava's climb is essentially suicide by mountain. Whether it's obsession or depression, the thing I reflected on most as I played Cairn was the misalignment between my goals as the player and Ava's goals as the climber. I desperately did not want her to succeed. I could see how destructive Ava's chosen path was, and I would gladly choose for her another, and yet I was the one willing her up the mountain, because that's what we do when we play video games. It's what separates our medium from the others. We affect the outcomes. We often can't choose them, but we always affect them, because to paraphrase the wise tweet, we control the buttons that we press. I was speaking about this during the same episode of the Friends Per Second podcast, and some of the comments suggested that Cairn and The Last of Us Part 2 are similar in that way. Both games where obsession or a mental health crisis, or possibly both, lead characters down reckless paths that we, as the player, don't want to enable, but the video game form gives us no other choice but to become an accomplice. Where Cairn is different from The Last of Us Part 2 is that it does, at one point, offer a choice, but I think it's a pretty false choice. Towards the end of the game, you can choose to climb back down the mountain, and if you do so, you get a little cutscene showing that, and that's it.
Yes. I think it's time I came down.
But after you get the Steam achievement, or whatever, you can immediately reload your save and continue climbing, and every single person will do that, because knowing that there's more mountain to climb in a mountain climbing video game means that we will want to climb that mountain, otherwise we'll feel like we haven't truly finished it despite rolling the credits. It made me wonder, what could the game makers have done to make that decision more meaningful? What if it deleted your save file when you made that decision, so you truly had to sit with it? Would anyone have made that decision then? What if the decision unlocked a new game plus that offered an entirely new storyline as you climbed, with an Ava who is less obsessed or depressed and ready to climb with a new endpoint in mind? I don't know the answer, to be honest. All I know is that the decision to go back down didn't really feel like an actual decision in my mind. It just felt like a chance to see a cutscene and get an achievement before reloading your save and continuing the climb towards the true ending. Ava's fate feels utterly inevitable, and that was the game maker's intent. Ava's condition, whatever it was not a puzzle to be solved. It was a fait accompli. It was not your job as the player to save Ava. She was already dead before you even picked up the controller, and she would have gotten to the top of that mountain with or without your help.
Take care of yourself, Ava. It's important.
Ugh, this is not the time. Stop beeping right now.
I really did mean what I said earlier about Cairn being something that you could hand to someone who's never played video games before, but obviously, everyone who's watching this video probably does play video games, so here's what I would say to you. It doesn't matter who you are, Cairn is for you. It doesn't matter if you only play FIFA or Minecraft or cinematic Sony sad dad games or automation games or whatever, Cairn is for you. It has an elemental quality, it's deeply intrinsic. It doesn't test you as a gamer, it tests you as a person. You don't consider the aspects of the game nearly as much as you consider the aspects of yourself. The introspection it elicits is not about your thumb skill or your puzzle solving. Instead, it prompts you to reflect on who you are, what you're made of, how patient and disciplined you are, how you handle pressure. Cairn gives you a simple set of controls and a simple goal. Climb that big rock, and after that, the rest is up to you. There's no excuses, no distractions. It's just you and the mountain until you either get to the top or quit. At the time of writing, only 22.5% of the people who have played this game have made it to the top. Are you going to be one of them? I really think you owe it to yourself to find out. It's a new year, which means it's a chance to start something new. So if there's a business idea, hobby, or project you've been wanting to kick off, maybe consider making it happen with this video sponsor, Squarespace. Because a website can be that thing that makes your idea real. A piece of virtual real estate where you can publish work you've written or photos you've taken, a place you can sell stuff you've made, a place you can book appointments with clients, a place you can build new communities. So much of it happens online, and unless you have a website that's purpose-built to deliver your goals, you're going to be going in with one hand tied behind your back. The days of having to hire an expensive team of web developers to make your website are over. With Squarespace, you can build a professional looking website in just minutes. Just start by selecting one of their templates, customize it using their intuitive tools, and then begin uploading your content, be it published articles, the inventory of stuff you're selling, your art portfolio, whatever. Squarespace websites all support e-commerce, making it easy to begin doing business, either by selling products or by organizing appointments if you're providing a service. They also support multiple payment solutions, as well as detailed analytics so you can see how customers are finding you and what they're doing when they spend time on your site. They're also ready for this next AI-enabled era, with AI-powered tools that make website design and copywriting even easier, and their SEO tools have been refreshed to ensure that your site appears in AI-powered searches and chatbot responses. There's so much more that Squarespace offers, so if you'd like to check it out for yourself, you can visit squarespace.com to try it for free. And if you want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup to get 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. A big thanks to Squarespace for their 7 years of support, and a big thanks to you for watching this video.